The water I use to brew beer is important to me, and not just because it's a finite resource here in the Ojai Valley, but because I think it's the first place to look for what makes beer local. And I think it's a major opportunity missed by a lot of breweries using reverse osmosis water filters. Some would argue that water is the most important part of the beer equation. Water is about 95% of the entire solution that we call beer, and affects mouthfeel and flavor and aroma, and the overall chemistry of how grain and herbs work together. I'm lucky to live in an area with great drinkable water. The water I use gets filtered to remove chlorine and nothing else. I use the water profile that Ojai has in its natural form, and I do it because I think it's an important element of the authenticity of the beer. Ojai has super hard water, and it makes very specific tasting beer. I absolutely refuse to use reverse osmosis water systems for a couple of reasons. The first is, I want my beer to be an authentic representation of where it comes from. But secondly, and more importantly, reverse osmosis is wasteful. Most reverse osmosis systems create 4 to 6 gallons of wastewater for every 1 gallon of RO water they produce. In some parts of America, that might be fine, but in the thirsty area of California where I live, it's a problem. And I think we all need to be thinking about the water stability of where we live. You should ask your local brewery if they're using reverse osmosis water. At its scientific simplest, when I talk about water profiles, I'm talking about pH, mineral hardness, and alkalinity. In beer making, that chemical composure tells a story about where the water comes from, whether that water came out of a lake or a river, or like a mountain spring that's been picking up minerals as it drips its way through sheets of granite for thousands of years. It's different from place to place, and we generally recognize it as hard or soft. It's the kind of thing that makes bagels taste so much different in New York than they do everywhere else. Most styles that we consider classic now were designed around how the water in certain brewing towns affected the ingredients that they were using. For instance, the water in Dortmund, Germany has a natural chemical profile that makes it perfect for making pale malty Pilsner. In Vienna, not that far away, they lacked the calcium in their water to mimic that style. Viennese brewers tried to change their water chemistry by adding calcium, but it didn't work. So instead, they added some toasted malts to their grain bills, and the famous red lagers of Vienna were born. This is a perfect example of using what you have to create something local and different. Because water profiles differ so greatly from place to place, and because American brewers want to brew every style under the sun in its most classic form, see my video about style guidelines, the first impulse is to use reverse osmosis water. The water gets stripped of all its natural attributes, and then they add mineral salts and acid back to it to mimic the water profile of a place like Dortmund, Germany for Pilsners, or like Burton-on-Trent in England for IPAs. Now that's fine, and it takes skill. And while I'm all for better living through chemistry in the pursuit of perfection, at the end of the day, what they've done is expertly copy what countless others have already mastered, but wasted a lot of water doing it. Breweries aren't doing this as a shortcut or for nefarious reasons. They're doing it because it's what they think you want, and because they know it's easier to get you to drink something that you're already familiar with than it is to get you to accept something different from the average. And that's not your fault. It's just simple human psychology. More on that later. But until then, I think we as craft beer drinkers need to give breweries the permission and encouragement to take more steps to make beer about us and about the place that it comes from.